So ever stare up at a massive construction project, maybe a towering skyscraper or a sprawling new stadium, and wonder what happens when things go horribly wrong? And not just from one direction, but from multiple directions at the exact same time? We're talking millions of dollars on the line, blown deadlines, and everyone pointing fingers. Well, welcome to today's explainer. We are going to unravel one of the absolute most complex, highly debated, and high-stakes mysteries in project controls: concurrent delay. It is a fascinating puzzle of time, money, and logic.
To help us navigate this whole thing, I want to introduce you to our expert guide, Technic Planner. Picture him out there on a chaotic stadium site, staring at a digital schedule where literally everything is happening all at once. This perfectly illustrates the real-world scenario we're tackling today. Imagine you're building this massive stadium. Suddenly, two things hit you simultaneously. First, the employer issues a huge variation, like completely redesigning the lighting rig at the last minute. And at that exact same moment, the contractor gets hit with a massive labor shortage. Both of these, total showstoppers, and they hit the project timeline at the exact same time. So how on earth do you figure out who pays for what?
Well, the reality of these clashes generally breaks down into two distinct categories. You have true concurrency and functional concurrency. True concurrency is exactly what it sounds like. It's two delay events that start and finish at the precise same moment, both acting as ultimate showstoppers. But here is the funny reality on the ground. Experts often joke that true concurrency is basically the workable Brexit of the construction industry. It gets claimed in disputes all the time, but it's almost never actually found in practice. What we usually deal with is functional concurrency. This is the much messier reality where events might happen at different times, but their ripple effects overlap heavily on the critical path of the project schedule.
Okay, agenda time. Here's our roadmap for untangling this. We've got 1. Core definition, 2. The prevention principle, 3. Resolution approaches, 4. First in line and but for, 5. The battle for float, and 6. Evidence and records. Let's get into it. Let's jump right into Section 1, Core definition.
Right, so concurrent delay happens when two or more independent events cause a project overrun. But here's the absolute crucial phrase you need to remember: equal causative potency. For delays to actually be concurrent, they must carry roughly the same weight in their ability to derail the project. If one delay is just a minor hiccup and the other is a massive schedule-destroying catastrophe, they aren't concurrent. The heavier one simply becomes the dominant delay. It has to be a fairly even match of disruption.
Moving right along to Section 2, the prevention principle.
This is the foundational legal anchor for these disputes. Simply put, a party cannot benefit from its own wrong. Think about it just from a common sense perspective. If an employer actively prevents a contractor from finishing on time, maybe they withhold access to the site or they fail to deliver crucial design blueprints, they cannot then turn around and penalize the contractor for being late. They generally lose the right to insist on the original completion date, and more importantly, there is no way they can slap the contractor with hefty liquidated damages for that specific delay period.
Section 3. Resolution approaches.
So, if the employer can't always penalize the contractor, and both parties are at fault, how do we actually solve this puzzle? Professionals generally turn to the big three methods. First up, the Mama-san approach. This is super common in England and is known as the time but no money rule. The contractor gets an extension of time, saving them from those nasty liquidated damages, but they don't get any extra cash for the extended stay because, frankly, their own delay would have kept them there anyway. Next is apportionment, which is quite popular in Scotland. This lets the tribunal look at the mess and simply split the difference, say assigning 50-50 liability based on each party's degree of fault. And finally, the dominant cause approach. This one doesn't split anything. It goes hunting for the most significant factor, and whichever event was clearly more impactful takes the full blame.
All right, Section 4, first in line and but for. When those big three approaches aren't quite enough to untangle the mess, analysts bring in a couple of secondary tools. Step 1 is the but-for test. Tribunals will look at the contractor and ask, but for the employer's delay, would your project have been delayed anyway? If the contractor's own resource shortage was already going to push the project back 3 months, well, they can't claim financial compensation just because the employer also messed up during that same window. Step 2 is the first-in-line approach. This looks strictly at the chronological sequence. If the project was already bleeding time due to the contractor, a later employer delay that doesn't actually push the ultimate finish line any further back might not grant the contractor any extension of time at all. It is literally all about who fired the first shot that moved the deadline.
That brings us to Section 5, the battle for float.
Moving from legal theory to the gritty reality on the job site, we hit a massive friction point. Who owns the project float? Now, if you aren't familiar, float is essentially the cushion or leeway built into a schedule before an activity becomes critical and delays the whole job. It's your buffer zone. Contractors fiercely argue that this float is their personal cushion, built in to absorb their own unforeseen risks. Employers, though, they look at that same cushion and want to use it to absorb their design variations without having to grant extra time. So who actually wins? Well, unless your contract strictly dictates otherwise, many jurisdictions simply treat this float as a shared resource. First come, first served. Whoever delays first eats the cushion.
And finally, Section 6, Evidence and Records. This is where all those theoretical models have to face cold, hard facts. You see, there's a massive divide between how projects are run versus how disputes are actually won. On one side, we have prospective analysis. While the work is ongoing, standard industry contracts often require parties to estimate the likely future effects of a delay event. It's an educated guess. But on the flip side, we have retrospective analysis. This looks back at what actually happened using historical site records. When disputes escalate to courts or tribunals, they heavily prefer retrospective analysis. They absolutely do not want your theoretical models of what might have happened. They want the cold, hard facts of what did happen.
To really hammer this home, there's this famous quote from a judge dealing with exactly this issue. Why should I grope in the dark when I can see what actually happened? It's a brilliant reality check. Your sophisticated, multi-layered delay analysis is completely useless if it's not backed by contemporaneous records. We're talking about daily logs, accurate data on actual labor outputs, site photos, precise timing records. Without that solid paper trail, your multi-million-dollar claim is just an easily challenged theory groping in the dark.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer, remember that concurrent delay isn't just about overlapping dates on a calendar. It is fundamentally about causation, logic, and common sense. But it does leave us with a pretty provocative thought to take away. If all of these massive, costly investigations rely on interpreting who gets the extension, who gets the money, and who owns the float, wouldn't airtight, brutally clear contract drafting from day one completely eliminate the need for these messy investigations in the first place? Definitely something to think about next time you sign off on a schedule. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and hey, keep those records tight.